All right, time to get started, folks. 6:30 in my clock here from India. And each of your clocks, I'm sure, have your own time zones. Thank you all. Welcome to another exciting webinar from our series from IFEES, GEDC, and IUCEE. And as you can see from the title slide of Dr. Wajid Hussain, many other people are involved in this process as well, particularly SWD and IN4OBE. So that shows the amazing background and expertise of Dr. Wajid Hussain that draws people from around the world. We almost have 100 people and so many more will join. It's a very important topic. Dr. Wajid Hussain is a CEO of IN4OBE and the Director of Office of Quality and Accreditation, Faculty of Engineering, Islamic University of Medina, and we've got all the acronyms of all the organizations that he's very, very actively involved with. So and I've in the email that was sent to you, you have seen a lot of information about Dr. Wajid Hussain. I'm not going to take the time to read much of it, but except to say that we have one of the world's experts in outcome-based education here with us. So let's take full advantage of him rather than my just going on and talking. Okay, so Dr. Wajid Hussain, you are on. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Krishna. I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, as we're always dealing with time zones all across the globe. And I thank each one of you for being here personally. Actually, I should take the names of our colleagues and friends, but there are just so many. So I'm going to just walk over that part. And we hope that this will be a beneficial presentation. The topic is dense. And I know you're coming from a lot of different backgrounds. The majority of us are from the engineering specialization, but we do have attendees from other areas as well. So let's get started. The whole idea of outcome-based education or transformational outcome-based education is to go beyond content, beyond pure technical skills to actually being great human beings, global citizens, respecting diversity, caring for humanity, having empathy, having ethics, all of those put together. So let's dive deeper into the presentation today. Okay, all right. We know about the Four Noble Truths and how important and divine those are. These are none at all comparable to those, but they are what we call as the practical truths in education, assessment, evaluation. So we have four aspects which are very, very critical for integrating skills into education. One is accurate learning models. The other is the right kind of instruction strategy for learning, a quality improvement process, and digital technology to bring all these together to make it happen. So we need to have the big picture. I know the topic is very specific, but without this perspective, and we have educators in all walks of life at all levels, but we do need to have a full picture of what's actually happening when we are working with outcomes and how to design the systemic application of outcomes. Because when you look at mastery learning, and then when you look at Bill Spaddy's outcome-based education, this is a systemic view, a systemic implementation rather than just a modular implementation. So we need to have the big picture. So this is a nice model of theoretical, conceptual, and practical frameworks put together. It's in our 2020 paper regarding, quality and outcome-based education with the perspective of ABET accreditation systems. So here, when we talk about theoretical framework, it's OBE theory, it's the philosophy, paradigm, principles. Then we extract concepts which are based on those, the learning model, the alignment to design down, going all the way from goals, all the way into performance indicators, which are the competencies. Then the assessment model taken from a national accreditation agency. Over here, it's ABET, which is the International Accreditation Agency. Then you have techniques and methods, uh, design rules for outcomes, classification of outcomes, embedded assessments, weighting factors. All of those are techniques and methods, and then the practical framework to implement that. So a lot of schools are moving away from Excel, tending towards automation, and they've realized how impractical it is to be dealing with hundreds of outcomes at an undergraduate level and to be managing those. So we look into digital platforms that can manage these learning management systems, outcome assessment systems, continuous improvement management systems, advising systems. All of those still are to be regulated using very specific quality management processes and policies, especially the Deming-Sheward quality cycles. So we have multiple quality cycles here. So without these frameworks, without the quality processes, we are not going to be able to implement outcomes the right way. Students may not learn the skills they're supposed to learn, and teachers may be uh, in a mode of imagination of maybe something's going to happen finally, but it's probably not going to happen because it's not happening the right way. So this is a small chart over here with a big amount of information. I'm sorry for that. I'm not going to go into these details, but these are for informative purposes, how we have multiple quality cycles wherein standards are prescribed, and then we have development and implementation processes and review processes in each of these cycles. Each of these cycles have timing and a certain set of target goals to achieve. Like Q1 is for course outcomes, performance indicators, and hybrid rubrics development. And Q2 cycle is checking whether the syllabi is being implemented, checking whether the course assessments are implemented, and end of term reviews. In Q3, Q4 is multi-term reviews for performance indicators. Q5 is program outcomes multi-term review. Quality cycle 6 is what we call as the program educational objectives. Now, these are extracted from ABET's assessment terminology. Don't worry about them too much right now, but the idea is to understand that there has to be quality cycles. Now, coming back to OBE theory, developing a clear set of learning outcomes for the whole education system is going to be absolutely crucial. Establishing conditions and opportunities within the system that enable and encourage all students. The key thing is all students. Now, this is very important because when we develop outcomes and develop the assessments for them and evaluation for them, we tend to be moving towards randomization, tend to be checking only a few samples and doing the whole evaluation on that, but that kills the quality process, that kills learning. We need to have information for each and every student. So success for all students and staff. And the key thing is the strategies can be different for different students. The modes of delivery can be different. So all students can learn and succeed, but it cannot happen on the same day, and especially not in the same way. So moving forward, clarity of focus, from day one, the students need to have a clear understanding of what are they going to actually learn. And that is the top priority for instructional planning and student assessment. It is the starting point for curriculum, instruction, and assessment planning. And there's no surprises, no shock treatments in outcome-based education philosophy. Everything is clear from day one. Then time, methods and modalities, operational principles, performance standards, curriculum access structuring, all of these are not the base, but these are means to achieve learning. So this is a very, very crucial. Now, for example, in the Carnegie credit hour system, time is kind of a base. but we should not make time base, but time rather an opportunity to learn. That's from John Carroll's model. So moving forward, let's look into another very crucial power principle of OB, high expectations, having very clear expression of what are the standards of acceptable performance, eliminating success. Everybody can, you could have 100% of the class succeed. It's nothing like just the top 5% make it and the rest cannot. And having access, clear structural access to different levels of curriculum. Design down. It's called design down because it's called actually the mountain climber model. I'll come back to that in a little bit of time. We have to start with culminating outcomes and go to enabling outcomes and then discrete outcomes. So you do reverse engineering. And the second rule is faculty should be willing to replace or eliminate parts of content if they have to. Now, a key concept of implementing outcome-based education is to have the right learning model. Learning models are now specified by national qualification frameworks in many countries. Universally, everybody knows about Bloom's learning model, where we have cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. Actually, these are the 1956 Bloom, updated in 2001 by Anderson and Cratwell. In affective domain, it was Cratwell, Macy, and Bloom, 1973. And psychomotor domain has different models, but we are considering over here the 1972 Simpson model. So let me go into this a little bit. These are the various levels. Why is the learning model important? Because the learning model gives us the different domains which have to be covered in the process of education in our education systems, and also indicates the progression in learning. How do we identify progression of learning? How do we plan the progression of learning? So you see over here, going from low order skills to high order skills. That's basically mastery learning of Bloom. So you see cognitive, you see affective, 5 levels, you see psychomotor, 7 levels. Now these could actually change depending on what's really good and workable for your specialization. Now, if you ask assessment experts, learning models need not be exactly these. Yes, cognitive is very, very universal, applicable, but affective domain and psychomotor domain could be very specific. For example, for engineering, even the specialization of engineering could change these learning levels and actually develop those which are appropriate for them. So there is a lot of debate here, and there's a lot of evolution happening at in national, international levels. UNESCO documents point out more than 100 plus countries are developing, all of these models and domains of learning for their countries. So we did a simple thing because we have to implement that using digital technology. We took these 3 domains, then we bifurcated them into 3 different levels: elementary, intermediate, and advanced, because dealing with 6 or 7 levels for faculty and tracking each level and its coverage and progression for students all throughout the curriculum becomes difficult manually, or actually it becomes impossible. So that's why we bifurcated them into 3 categories, and then we track them electronically. But this is a good idea of how we can follow up practically on achieving and tracking learning progression. So you find elementary skills, and these are some verbs. You have intermediate skills, and you see those verbs. The left side, you're talking about uh, cognitive on the top, affective, and then psychomotor. These are some samples here. And you have advanced skills. So you have different skills. These are the verbs. This is not absolute science here. These are just examples. Some of the faculty members, they think they're absolute science, and they argue with some of the experts in the field as to maybe explain has to be just cognitive, but it may not be just cognitive. So we will go into that in a little bit. The reason why we divide skills into these 3 categories is to understand that courses are also at different levels. So if you take courses, divide them into 3 levels in an undergrad curriculum, it could even be for the graduate level. So you're talking about introductory courses, maybe 100, 200 level courses, reinforced courses, 300 level courses, mastery courses, 400 level courses. So you have a certain proportion of skills for each course type. If you look into an introductory course, you should have more of elementary skills. And then you should have a moderate proportion of intermediate skills and a low proportion of advanced skills. But if you see 100, 200 course and it's talking about synthesize, evaluate, and do complex things in a majority of its activities, then we are in the wrong game altogether. So that's why this proportion is very, very critical to have the right. So immediately, once one institution, without taking names, they paid a big amount of money to another school overseas, and they got help to develop the engineering programs. And when we looked at the syllabi, about 90% of the courses students graduated with analyze. So nothing much happened excepting for analysis. And right away, we knew it was a copycat syndrome, and that doesn't work. Sometimes faculty don't even touch the course outcomes. They're like, or program outcome, and they're like black boxes. They're just given, handed over to them to do something with them. Now, let's look at Washington Accord engineering profiles. This is the International Engineering Association. I'm just bringing them up. You're not going to look into details, but just bring them up to understand that the scope of knowledge and practical experience and competencies engineers need to have. It actually shows the Sydney and Dublin Accords also for the technologist and technician. You see over here, depth of knowledge, familiarity of issues, interdependence, judgment, beautiful range of engineering acts. These are crucial for engineering schools to look at them. And I really put this up like the divine commandments of engineering education. All of the engineering accreditation bodies actually derive their standards from the Washington Accord. And ABET is also one of the founding signatory members of the Washington Accord. So you see here, knowledge profile, excellent, beautiful. All teachers should read this so that they can plan, and especially program chairs, so they can plan the whole curriculum and embed these wherever they are possibly capable to actually embed them into certain courses and follow up on the progression. You find graduate attributes, which we call as the program outcomes. There are 12 of these. I'm not going to go into this detail. It's just for an information purpose. You see also one very interesting thing over here, project management finance. Just look at that. Ethics, environment, sustain, wonderful. Engineer and society. This is what transformational OBE is, to deal with real problems, to get the empathy, to become leaders. So you need this information. It's not just content anymore. Yeah. And then professional competency profiles. All of these have to be embedded into curriculum, and the plan has to be laid out by faculty along with the chair of or the department head, and plan out throughout the curriculum where and which courses it's relevant to bring all these aspects of engineering into the curriculum. This is just Saudi Arabia and the World Economic Forum, jobs and education back in 2020, but it's a good example. We need to look into LinkedIn, Glassdoor technologies, burnt glass technologies, get the data from them. What are the emerging skills in our area, maybe in the globe for these specializations, and plug them in and align them with the Washington Accord profiles and plug them. Like I took out lifelong learning skills. Where do I plug them in? I've selected electronics one, electrical power systems, a 300 level course, and senior design project 400. So I have to track these using specific outcomes and follow up on progression of learning, introduce concepts early and into the middle stages of the program, even towards the end. You see, this is how we're going to structure the whole curriculum. We will have introductory courses, reinforced courses, and mastery level courses, and plugging in not only technical content, emerging skills, live performance roles, Washington Accord profiles, all of that in at the right places. So it's actually a complex responsibility. And when you write outcomes at a course level, you have to reflect all of those integrations. I'm not going to go into explain what's designed down because we will be in a crunch of time. So we looked at employment needs, take them to student needs, then into institutional mission. We're talking about alignment here, then to program outcomes. And then from program outcomes, we take them to the teacher objectives, and then course outcomes. There's different objectives and outcomes. We'll come to that. And from the course outcomes, we go to assessment methods. From the assessment methods, we go to teaching strategy. And that's how we complete the student learning outcome implementation framework. There is a key thing here. After you design the course outcomes, which come from the teacher objectives, you go to assessment in this particular model. This is an assessment experts model. However, when you look into other models like ABIT's Gloria Rogers model, if you look into this particular flow chart, you can get it on ABIT.org. You see here, after program outcomes, you get the performance criteria. From performance criteria, you go to instructional strategy. From instructional strategy, then you go to assessment. But if you go back and you look at assessment models of expert, you have after performance criteria and outcomes, you have assessment. It's like going to, you want to pass a car driving test. So first you need to know what are the skills for car driving, which is connected with the assessments. And accordingly, then you will arrange the teaching strategy for those. So that's the ideology behind this. And that's why assessment experts refer to that model more versus this, but there are two models. This is for your kind information. There's a big confusion about, hey, project-based learning is better than outcome-based learning. Cooperative learning is absolutely the last. The format is divine, but people don't understand all of these are under the umbrella of outcomes. Now, if it's problem-based learning, your outcomes are going to be different, the timelines are going to be different, the targets are going to be different, the approach of teaching is going to be different, the assessment is different, but still you have outcomes, still you have skills, still you have competencies, still the process exists. So there is no conflict there. When I talked about the frameworks right in the beginning, you need to connect with the assessment model of your accreditation agency. Yeah, when you connect with the accreditation models, assessments, you have different terminologies like what are the culminating outcomes. For example, if you look at ABET, it talks about program educational objects, which are broad statements of what students will be doing and will know after a few years after graduation in the market, at industry. Then you talk about program outcomes, which are student outcomes. Then you have performance indicators, and then you have course outcomes. So these are terminologies, and you can say objectives or outcomes that you have to identify from the assessment model of your national accreditation agency or international accreditation agency and implement them into your whole process and framework for implementation. This is just an example of how we develop program education objectives. You take the Washington Code profiles, you take the ABIT SOs, you take the national vision, you take a university mission, you take live performance roles like being a team leader, a community, you could say social activist. You have interpersonal skills, emerging skills. You put them all together, and there is a philosophy for that. And there is a paper that you can actually refer to. You just have to type on Google. The reference is right below ABIT accreditation post-COVID. And you'll get a bunch of detail for that. There is a big confusion on what are goals, what are objectives, what are outcomes, what are performance indicators. So without going into much detail, if you do not know those differences, then you'll have a very hard time to write outcomes that can be accessible and that can lead to the right goals in learning that we target for students. So when you look at program goals, it's future tense, doesn't have action verbs. There's no subject format. There are no performance scales. It targets multiple skills levels. It's very futuristic. If you look at objectives, it could be a program or even course object. These are teacher-centered. Again, future tense. They don't have action verbs. There's no subject format. There's no performance scales. Now, when you come to course outcomes, they're in present tense. They contain operational action verbs. They still do not have performance scales. But when you come to performance indicators, as you see, the pyramid is inverted. What it means, it increases in specificity and measurement. And when you go upwards, it becomes broader and more difficult to measure. So performance indicators, they help you to make rubrics. Performance indicators are very specific. They have accurate information on what has to be done. They can even provide some levels of information for the levels of competence. So, and it is very specific on the domain of learning. For instance, you cannot combine a performance indicator, psychomotor, affective, and cognitive. You cannot combine all of these three together. Either it has to be cognitive or affective or psychomotor. Yes, the course outcome can be compounded. It can be explain something, then analyze something, and then write up a report or make a presentation. So it could be explain something cognitive, make a report, compare, evaluate, and then it could also be communication, which is affective domain. So you see on the left side, we have indexed each of these performance indicators which are tied to course outcomes and aligned to program outcomes. They're classified in the levels of learning, which are Bloom's three domains. You see cognitive, you have affective, you have psychomotor. For example, you have psychomotor adaptation. So all of these are tracked and indexed. Without doing this, unfortunately, you will not get the beauty of tracking progression of learning, of implementing outcomes the right way. The other thing is, do not invent or reinvent the wheel again and again. So when you talk about assessments, make them embedded, which means that you have your existing curricular assessments, which are maybe quizzes or homeworks or projects or maybe some presentations or any of those kind case studies. So implement a structured plan so that all of the assessments for these outcomes are integrated into these assessments, and you just grab them. So you have to disaggregate the scores and break them down so that each of these sub activities in these assessments actually track to the outcomes that we want to measure. So here we have John Estelle's faculty course assessment book. He is now the commissioner of the EAC for ABET, a wonderful instrument. I would advise you to go into more detail. I'm not going to go into very much of these details. You see here in the faculty course assessment report, you can also bring in the old actions and the new actions, because they have to be corrective actions. What do you do with outcomes when you see failures? There has to be a feedback loop. There has to be corrective actions based on those. And so are those actions closed? Are they open? And what's the time frame for those? All of those are maintained in the faculty course assessment report. So the evaluation, the actions, and the results. So you have course activity, you have real-time actions, and you have deferred actions. So you need to be very, very careful that, yes, if you don't have real-time corrective action, there's no formative assessment happening and you're on the wrong track. So basically what you're saying is most of the randomized sampling that happens just for accreditation purposes, actually it doesn't sustain real-time corrective action. We need to focus on the students on in our class at hand, the problems that they face, and on time real-time corrective action so we can fix the problem. But you see here now, this is some snapshot of what we see in the eval tools faculty course assessment report. We have the course exit surveys, which is the indirect assessment. We have grade distribution. Then you see here the all ported actions. The moment a faculty member starts the course, what should he do? He should actually port the actions from last term, either from his own course or another faculty taught the course. So you see here the first thing, all actions, they're ported. And I have to close these actions. When I start the course again, they are deferred actions. I need to close it in the next offering. So there's some existing problems. And then you have new issues which are there in the reflections and new action items created. So the parts which are below, they actually show you the way assessments happen and evaluation takes place, which uses the performance vector EAMU. They are the 4 scales of rubrics: excellent, adequate, minimal, unsatisfactory. So you see here a particular course outcome, we use a quiz, a homework, a midterm, and we aggregate them, the weighting factors. So you cannot take a homework and put it along with a final exam, which is a very mature assessment. And maybe the grade of the homework is just 10 points, the final exam is 100 points, or maybe 20% of the overall grade. So you have to apply scientific weighting factors. Without that, even if you write the best outcomes, but your whole aggregation system is messed up where you put tomatoes and bananas and mangoes and call it fruit salad, well, I'm very sorry to say it's not going to work that way. So you cannot take cognitive assessment and mix it up with effective and aggregate them together and say, hey, guess what? This is a 3.0 out of 4, and my students are doing very well. What does that 3.0 really mean? It does nothing. It's going to be garbage and junk. So it's very important to aggregate properly. By disaggregating properly, so you can also see the distribution of learning over here. You have elementary skills. How many elementary skills do I have for this level of course? Is it right? For instance, if I have a 200 level course and most of the learning is intermediate, that's still okay. That's okay. But then if I have a 400 level course and most of it is, you can say, elementary, it's completely wrong. One snapshot can let me know whether we are heading in the right direction. I'm just going to watch the time here. I hope, yeah. So you have weighting factors. I'm going to skip that. Then you have uh, precise course reflections. Look at this beautiful example here. Now we see that this is an electrical engineering problem, numerous formulas and for different topologies of thyristors. So students were confused and they could not apply. So when the outcomes are written accurately, when the assessment is accurately aligned, that means it's a valid assessment. Validity means it's aligned accurately with the target topic to be, or the activity to be assessed. So then there's some reason to go and do some feedback, I mean analysis, and give some feedback and correct the issue. But if the whole outcome is wrong, if the assessment is not aligned, for example, I am writing about oranges and the assessment is testing for apples, and then I got a number, I have 3 apples. Then I say, guess what? I bought actually 10 oranges and I have 3 apples. So the whole thing is messed up then. You see here, when you look into the action item, you see here, provide the students with a table. And you have we have indexed the course outcome and the performance indicator and the action. So we can go back. Actions have to be linked with outcomes. That's outcome based, not just random and ad hoc, haphazard. So we will provide them a table of topologies of thyristor. This will soften up their confusions and enlighten them further. Similarly, this is civil engineering course, reinforced concrete. 30% students did not know how to position columns in architecture and building plan. Guess what happened? Bingo. We extracted this course action. We sent it to the curriculum committee for civil engineering. And you know what they found? Holy schmoly, that's what they said. Holy schmoly, you know what? We taught civil engineering drawing, a prerequisite course. It did not even have locating the position of columns. See, they found a problem and they were going to go and fix it. So then let's look at thermodynamics, mechanical engineering problems. So all of the students messed up on solving problems. Why? They were confusing constant heat capacity values, specific values, with variable values. When they were doing the efficiency for gas turbines or other engines, what is the solution for that? A special focus on elaborating the difference. When do you have to apply specific heat constant data or variable specific heat data? So when you elaborate and make clear, the problem seems to diminish and reduce. So that's why you need to have a trackability of all of this. Then when you have all these domains, when you have the levels, all of that properly tracked, you can actually, in a snapshot, you can look at it and you can say, guess what? You know what? For outcome 1, I don't, you see this, there's not many mastery level courses doing advanced intermediate skills. Oh, you know what? Look at SO10. There's no mastery courses doing anything on lifelong learning. Oh man, that's terrible. So you see, as a program chair, the visibility that you get. Well, you can't do it on Excel. Well, if everybody is following this and there's a quality process, you can achieve that. Now you see here at program level, psychomotor skills, 26%. Wonderful. That aligns with even the great proportion of 20% we are giving for practical work. And affected domain is 16 and cognitive is 56. I'll come to how we also measure affected domain. But I'm just trying to show you here that when you do outcomes properly, you have digital technology and the language is correct, the assessments are very, very aligned, the results are usable. However, if you go to a doctor and you say, Doc, my stomach has really been paining for the last few weeks, he say, I want you to get an MRI done. What? I need the MRI done. Okay, do the MRI. Then what else, doc? Oh, I need you to go and get an X-ray of your feet. You're going to waste your time, and by the time the poor man is going to die, that's actually what's happening. Now, if you look over here at learning domains review, we can see, hey, you know what? We don't have enough work in cognitive. And actually, the senior design project, capstone, guess what? We are not even looking into ethics and standards there. We're not looking into societal constraints. What kind of engineers are these that they're designing all of this and they don't know that whatever power they're generating, is it within the viable limits of harmful radiation that can affect society living around those power generators? So we have a whole system of feedback and improvement then if you do it properly. Then you have the program level student outcomes in a snapshot. You can look into performance indicators, which are used to measure the student. Again, each of these performance indicators are not aggregated like apples and oranges or donkeys and horses, but each of them are classified separately. And there are a very scientific weighting factor mechanism. You just please type program evaluations, engineering program evaluation, type my name. You will get some papers from IEEE that we did a long time ago, and they give you a lot of information how to do this. All of these committees, like 20, 30 standing committees are there. Like it could be curriculum committee, it could be quality committee, it could be infrastructure or procurement of license for software. The MATLAB license is expired. The students could not get multi-sim to happen for some of their circuits. So we just boom, send it from the course to the committee and arrange it to high, you see, priority high. Who is the assigned person? And what is the timeline of this? Everything trackable with the timestamp. Without this, how are you going to use outcomes? Sorry, I need to pick up a little bit of my sugar. Thank you. If I was around, I would have actually offered you also. So please forgive me. The SOs which are being measured every year or every term, you need to have a trend analysis. You need to see whether the benchmarks have to change, whether you have to up the levels, or if you see all green, it's a problem. And if you see all red, it could be a problem too. But if the red is improving, it could be something good. But these have to be accurate to be able to look at these, otherwise they're useless. So now you see here quality management, outcomes information, advising. If you are tracking the outcomes properly, you can actually transfer all of this to advising. NACADA in the University of Kansas, National Association of Academic Advising, says outcomes advising should be based on outcomes. But really, who's doing it? I haven't seen one campus in the world. So we need to have outcomes and use them for advising and track that. And so that's all possible with the right kind of technology. We need to integrate learning management, outcome assessment, continuous improvement, academic advising all together. So this is the big picture. Getting into now language of outcomes. I especially want to point out to Clifford Adelman. He actually, very sorry to say, he passed away in 2018, but this is his 2015 work with the National Institute of Learning Outcome Assessment. Dr. George Poo was in our a keynote speaker in our conference in August 2022. Clifford Adelman did a great amount of work in tuning, which is writing specific outcomes. He was an expert. I cannot go into his detail, otherwise I'm going to spend a whole presentation doing that. But I want to just bring up something what he said here, which is very, very crucial. He said an authentic learning outcome statement does not rely on the proxies of course or credit or curricular segment completion, let alone the provision of opportunity to learn or grade point averages, none of which have anything to do with the specific student learning. Unfortunately, such proxies are too frequent in accreditation requirements that institutions express explicit standards for learning. An examination of 47 accrediting association standards, documents from 37 regional, national, and specialized organizations, I found only 18 that included standards for the type of student learning outcome statements described here, while 18 employed proxies and 11 did not mention student learning at all. Clearly, accrediting bodies have to take student learning outcome standards more seriously. This is absolutely the last statement from the expert himself. This is a wonderful national education policy from India 2020. Look at that. Look, I just took some excerpts here. The gap between the current state of learning outcomes and what is required must be bridged. The aim must be for India to have an education system by 2040. An excellent policy. We are here to help. The focus will be to have less emphasis on input, greater emphasis on output, potential concerning desired learning outcomes. This accepts the fact there is an existential gap in the achievement of learning outcomes and what happens in classrooms. The assessment tools have to be aligned. This is alignment. You have to see, if you look at the ABEDS model from program educational objectives to program outcomes to the course outcomes to performance indicators and assessments, and that's the stamp from the quality office that yes, it's aligned. So writing outcomes necessitates a full assessment picture in mind. So it's like wearing clothes and getting ready to go out. Take it seriously, be careful. So the hat is your student outcomes. The shirt is the course outcomes. Please close your eyes. The undies are your performance indicators. And the pants are your rubrics. Can you imagine now, faculty members, when we write outcomes, none of these are aligned. We write outcome, we stop at the outcome. We don't look at performance indicators and rubrics, forget about them. Imagine no rubrics. This is it. No performance indicators. It gets worse. So this is at least something, but then you don't want to see a person walking like this on the road. No rubrics. You need to have rubrics. So you see, all of them are aligned and connected. I'm sorry for that. It's a crude example, but it's a bitter truth. Now, a question: which dentist do you want to work on your teeth? That student, the teacher will instruct the student to know how to successfully drill cavities and repair teeth, or the student earns 100% on the exam for drilling cavities and teeth, or the teacher successfully taught the student. I'm sure you're not going to go to any one of these three. We have people who've been to some dentists. Oh my God. They end up in surgeries. Ooh, look at that now. The student knows how and successfully drills out cavities. You see the difference? And there's a big confusion. What are objectives and what are outcomes? So there's a confusion. They're not universally recognized. What's the difference? So objectives are statements which are teacher intended, teacher-centered, what students will learn. These are those statements with the outcomes of what students understand and they are able to do and demonstrate now. It's the student-centered approach. This is a very big difference. So learning objectives may outline the material, the instructor intends to cover, the course or program, or which are known as inputs, whereas learning outcomes focus on what students will know, comprehend, and able to do, which are known as outputs. So there is a confusion in what objectives are, what program objectives are, and what outcomes are. So this has to be clarified. So remember, they do not contain action verbs and they are futuristic intents. This is the biggest difference. Now, when you look into outcomes, it should be measurable. The language of outcomes should use operational action verbs. The conditions of learning activity described by nominal subject content, like what is the kind of activity? There has to be some detail, can be dark, can be abstract. The level of acceptable performance should be indicated in PIs and clearly followed up through in rubrics. And there should be multiple statements for each learning outcome, which we call as compound course outcomes or learning outcomes. I'll come to that in a bit. So the fundamental premise of Bloom's taxonomy is an educational outcome is reference to a specific level, I would say, for cognitive, affective, or psychomotor development. It does not have to be just one kind. The verb is the central fulcrum. Krishna, can you give me 7 more
Sure, sure,
minutes?
sure,
Then
sure.
I
Yeah,
will.
sure. I just want to
Or
give you. Yeah,
you want me to take some questions?
yeah, you
I
take a
can
few
take some
questions, but you're doing great.
questions.
You're doing a great job. Keep going for a few more minutes. Okay, I just want to give you a heads up. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Because we are coming to the most comedy
Yeah,
part.
sure.
Uh,
Right.
so I'm.
Sure. Go ahead,
It's
please.
not comedy. It's a combo actually. It's a tragedy and a comedy.
Sure.
So you see here, these verbs have to be linked to levels of achievement. And words in learning outcomes are written in the present tense. So these are some key things. So let's go into operational action verb, the topic specific, non-topic specific. This is very important. And then achievement and level performance. These are some key aspects of writing good learning outcomes. The formula here is operational action verb. I had a very senior professor telling me, why can't we use nouns? A perfect engineer, a very good surgeon, or an excellent analyst. Well, operational action verbs can be measured. The others cannot be measured. They lead to a very high levels of abstraction. So you find you also need to have a specific nominal content, like what is the steps, what is the method of doing this, what is the final object, is it a report, is it a product, what is the level of complexity in learning, what is the learning domain. All of this have to be taken into consideration when you write outcomes. So you see here a 3 credit hour course, 48 lectures in 16 weeks, 3 to 6 lectures for a topic, let's say 8 to 15 topics. We have one activity. I want to write an activity, say one activity, 2 to 3 lectures, one topic, 2 to 3 activities, 8 to 15 topics, 15 to 45 activities. Now, each activity is one verb. Now, my question is, how can you use just one verb outcomes to write and finish it off in 10 outcomes? How can you even do it? It doesn't add up. You see over here, that's why we have what we call as compound course outcome statement, compound. You see here, the example is, for instance, design, model, or simulate. We have a theoretical aspect and practical aspect, and we go topic wise. Sometimes we see the outcomes in a certain way that they don't flow sequentially. They start with topic one, or start with topic two, jump back to topic one, then go to topic three, and even the complexity of skills is all biryanied up. So that's very, very problematic. And the practical is dealt with separately, and theory. Let's say I'm dealing over here with synchronous motor generator. So I complete the topic if I have theoretical and practical knowledge, and it's easy for me to look at that course outcome and say, okay, the student has both practical and theoretical knowledge. And I can even track it with the PIs. But if I separate the practical knowledge to be outcomes in the end, and I make it composite, how am I going to extract it for AC or DC motors or maybe some other topic? I can never do that. So there are some key concepts here that have to be followed. It has to be sequential. You go topic by topic, you completely cover a topic, then you go to the next outcome. You make sure, which we call as ideal learning distribution of skills. If it's a 300 level course, you have intermediate level skills in majority. If it's advanced level course, you have the advanced skills in majority. So by looking at the words, you can figure out a lot of detail, what this is. So here you can plug in emerging skills, live performance roles, you can plug in knowledge profiles and problem solving profiles, all of that from Washington Accord. So all of that can be plugged in. So let's go into the use of PIs. This is a simple example. This is drawing, CAD, but I have a PI for manual drawing and I have a PI for AutoCAD. So I can track manual skills and using tools for plotting. So that's one advantage. Also, we look into mapping to multiple assignments over here. One is a theory exam, one is a practical exam. And we aggregate them to complete the entire topic, because the topic actually has practical activity and theory activity. You should not separate them. And this is some details on how you get the aggregation. I'm not going to go to that. And finally, all of these assessments are indexed with outcomes. And let's go into the course development exercise. So you need to know what course level it is. What is the learning distribution for that course? If it is more of elementary, more of intermediate, or less of advanced, you need to know the learning domain coverage. Does it have practicals? Does it have just theory? Does it have affected domain activity? You need to get together text and references, the syllabus, the major topics, the activities and topics, integration of specialized skills from maybe World Economic Forum, Washington Accord, from a national job pool requirements, and then take the assessments and put them together and then draw the course outcomes. So this is an example how I work with one faculty member. They were writing, understand evolution of wireless communication systems, and also understand and compare existing common mobile radio systems. So when I actually went into the assessments, looked at the text, looked at the topic, and asked the faculty, what do you really want to do? So he said, actually, we're just asking to define basic terms used in wireless communication systems. We want them to elaborate on their evolution, the different systems, and compare existing common mobile communication systems. So the course outcome was rewritten. Understand is not measurable. It's not an operational action verb. And we see now we develop PIs. So cognitive understanding is just define basic terms. Effective domain is now organizing values into properties. I'm elaborating the different communication systems, but I also look at standards and their impact, from a global economic environmental perspective. So it becomes effective domain, which is a person's behavior and belief in values and many other details. I'm not going to go into that. And then cognitive evaluating. There's a big confusion. Faculty members say confuse evaluation and analysis. When you have a judgment, it's evaluation. When you're breaking down a problem and comparing to existing theory or framework or formula, that's analysis. And then you're solving. So we have examples where we look at the original outcome with the faculty member and we correct it, and then we develop the PI for that. So you see here, this is psychomotor, a complex overt level. Why? Because he's calculating the number of users in a given mobile communication system, but using Erlang blocking probability charts. So when you're able to read charts correctly, it's not just cognitive. Of course, everything is cognitive. Nobody walks without a head. But we're talking about psychomotor here. Reading charts, observation skills. You could be a very smart engineer. You pick up the wrong number, you're going to kill everybody. You need to pick up the right number from the right place. So that's a psychomotor skill. So the classification of skills is very important. Going into another example, you see here, faculty member says, understand various kinds of wireless networks. We found out it's a compare wireless and fixed phone networks and explain. So here, explain is not cognitive. Just look at that. It's affected domain. And it's at a very high level. It's no longer just understanding. Sometimes explain becomes internalization. Look at the one below. It's a writing a report. It's internalization. It's a consistent, pervasive behavior of a student expressed in his communication skills, writing skills. So it's no longer, I had arguments with very senior professors, 30, 40 years, hundreds of publications. And there's no, Bloom says explain is understanding. Explain can also be creating. Explain can be evaluating also. So finally, going into rubrics, digital logic, electromagnetic theory, they're not same. They're different. The problem solving requirements, the knowledge and methods are different. So you cannot have generic rubrics at all. So you see here example, there is a specific rubric. This is called hybrid rubric. With the PI, you can extract the different steps. You have the percentage of points for the steps, and you have the scales, excellent student, unsatisfied student. And from that, you can extract a question. You can use subset of the rubric. You can use step 1 and step 2 if they're not interdependent. You can use just step 1 and step 4. Or if they're interdependent, you just introduce in sequence step 1, step 2, step 3, and create a problem with 3 steps. And you follow the same grading mechanism here. Another example. And another example. This you can go back in the video and pause it. Krishna, I think I am run out of time. There was a little bit about how to look into some of the existing problems here. If you give me 2 minutes, I will close this.
Take 2 minutes and we will close.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. This is from Clifford Adelman's abstraction errors. Appreciate, aware, awareness is a black hole. If you say students will become aware of what? You need to have something objective. Understand is also very problematic. It's from the dictionary of abstraction. So you cannot use this. Ability. Most of the accreditation bodies use ability. Ability is a blacklisted word in the US. It was associated with aptitude and IQ for judging minorities. So ability is gone out, is thrown out. This is Clifford Edelman working for Department of Education US. Just read his paper. I don't want to say anymore. Capacity, same. This is a big problem. It's a black hole. You don't know what capacity means. Capacity to learn, what does that mean? This is common errors happening. To achieve a capacity, what does this achievement mean? Okay, a highly developed students will develop something. What is that? There is abstraction here. Critical thinking is also very much phrased over here. You have to say what actually is the activity for critical thinking, like selecting sources and choosing, describing, defending, challenging a path of investigation for instructor. This is now more specific. You cannot just say students will. I had one professor, he wrote an outcome. The students will critically analyze software systems and process. I was said, Professor, you really think our students do that? He said, no, I'm going to do that. I was shocked. So the professor was writing what he is going to do, and he made that outcome. Teamwork is another big problematic. So in teamwork, be very specific. Are you talking about role assignment, meeting schedules, completing actions? Be very specific. Don't just be abstract. So all of these are major issues. Communicate, again, be very specific. What kind of communication? Is it a report? What is the objective communication? Is it a PowerPoint? Is it a report? Is it statistical analysis? What is it? Will recognize, will acquire, all these futuristic, very problematic.
Shall we close?
Yes. So with this, I'm going to pass.
I'm going to give a suggestion. If you close, then we can. I have a suggestion how to follow up. Okay.
This is again understand being used indiscriminately. Indiscriminate use of understand over here. You see here, understand is not measurable unless you do a neurosurgery here.
Right.
And there is a lot of additional language in course outcome. And you see this is MIT open coursework. You see here the course objectives are very nice, but there's additional language like design and digital logic, then specify this additional language maybe not necessary. There's lab work over here, which is separated from the theory topic, then which we call cart before the horse. Like say, apply theorem to solve circuits. Actually, the objective is solve circuits by solve this circuit. So not apply theorem to solve. This is called cart before the. And then you have order of topics are not correct. You have some redundancy. So you can see there's a lot of issues in technicality, and it will not support. I'm going to stop here.
I think it's best. It's a good idea to stop, Wajid.
Let us
I have a suggestion.
I have a suggestion,
Dr. Wajid Hussain. Okay, I have a suggestion. Since we have so many people here today, 175 participants have joined us. All of them in the chat box have been getting very excited, okay, about the excellent presentation that you made, and the fact that so much is condensed into one webinar. They would love to have your slides. Obviously, this is being recorded, so we'll send them recordings. But what I'm suggesting to you, Dr. Wajid, is if you can lead, okay, an effort that I'm going to suggest with your organizations, I4OBE and IFEES, GEDC, and IUCEE, a monthly webinar on OBE. We can break this down, and we can invite people from the audience who have experience in these things. So it doesn't have to be you giving all the webinars, but a few of the people in the audience which can also volunteer saying this aspect of it I will present, and so on. Because we need a much more extended version of this kind of training for all our understanding for our community. And I would like you to lead that community of OBE, the global community of OBE, by organizing, with the help of Hans, myself, and others, a series of monthly webinars we can pick some good speakers from around the world and come in together and coordinate the work and make sure that most all our people around the world, as you just showed in the new education policy in India, exactly right on. But the question is how to implement that. Very few people know. So you can help lead that effort. Is that something that you'd be willing to consider? We can have exchange emails on and Zoom meeting later on offline. Is that something that you can willing to lead? Then we can have a monthly webinar series on OB. Hans, what do you think?
I think it's
I think that's
I think, can you hear me? I think it's a brilliant idea. Wajid, you're an inspiring individual. And as Krishna said, we want to hear more, but what you've been able to do in the experience today is to bring in colleagues and friends from many, many countries that have not historically participated, some obviously from countries. And you just made my day. It's beautiful to see this kind of, and this is a deep commitment that Krishna and I have to really reach out, working with all 6 continents. And looking at the participation, it just confirms that. I love the idea, Krishna. Let's offline, obviously.
Let's have a Zoom meeting with Dr. Wajid and decide if that makes sense.
Exactly.
And I'm sure there are other people that Dr. Wajid and you and I know that could be part of this series, monthly series. Dr. Wajid, do you think that's a good idea? Just a preliminary indication.
That's a wonderful proposition, and most welcome. We can go into the details of how to make it happen.
Have a private Zoom meeting.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
In this audience, I will send an email to all the people in this audience, 172 of you, and send you a recording. And Wajid, if you can send me the PPT slides, okay, I will send it to all of the participants also. And then I can ask some of the participants, there may be some experts in the audience itself who might be willing to be part of this webinar series. So we'll see if there are a few people in the audience who can be part of it from different countries.
And some are already indicating interest to do this, Krishna.
Yes, absolutely. They're all excited.
I'm very, now this, you've touched a beautiful nerve in all of us here today, Wajid, really. And that's a beautiful way. I want to be respectful of the time, Krishna. Let me just
go ahead and wind it up.
Many thanks, Krishna. Let me just again thank you, Wajid, for this outstanding presentation and inspiring quietly. And I'm so happy about the global presence here of about 180 people, which is beautiful. Let me just a couple of comments about, of course, IUCEE are very close colleagues and friends of IFEES and GEDC. I'm very happy to share that this week, Monday, Tuesday, we celebrated the 15th anniversary of the Global Engineering Deans Council that we formed in Paris in 2008. I'm just very, very pleased. And we've formed chapters in different parts of the world, Latin America and Africa, et cetera, per se. So I just wanted to share that with all of you, and we want you to get engaged, particularly in the Deans community. The other thing, I'm leaving today for Hong Kong, and I've not been to Hong Kong and also China for several years, given the COVID and all that. And we helped form the Asian Engineering Deans Council in Singapore about 12 years ago. And we are meeting for the first time the deans in Asia, of many Asian countries, not all Asian countries, for example, this coming week. And I'm very pleased to return there. Thirdly, ASCE is hosting the annual conference in Baltimore in the United States, not too far from Washington, D.C. We'll have several events there, and that I hope to see some of you. And finally, and certainly not least, I'm very happy, and I want to invite all of you to join us this October in Monterrey Tech, Mexico, for our global WEAF IFEES GEDC conference, where we expect professors, corporate, government, deans, and students to engage and participate, and very exciting. So I just wanted to let you know that, and I'm just really happy at this very, very creative, wonderful session today. I don't know, Krishna, if you want to say something else.
I'll just say that we will have a Zoom session with Wajid, yourself, myself, and follow up. If you look at the chat box, Wajid, you can see that everybody is doing this, okay? Everybody is excited about what you've said, and I think you've touched a nerve, very important nerve, and there's a possibility for you and a team of people to take a global leadership in this effort. You've done fantastic work, okay? So with that, I will thank everybody and have you say a couple of quick words at the end, conclusion. Anything you want to say, Dr. Majid? Goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone here, and I know the potential is far much greater. And
Yes,
we've had hundreds of people participate in some webinars,
absolutely.
literally hundreds.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interest, and I look forward to this. If anyone has any other questions, please contact Krishna,
Yes.
or
I will email them. I
to
have a list of everybody and their
come back
email
to you with
IDs. So
answers.
I'll follow up with them. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good night, good morning,
So,
good evening, good
thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you,
Peace be
everybody.
with
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Everybody, peace. Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Peace to
thank you.
all.